think it's getting set up now.
I think it's live.
Perfect. Record. All right. I think we're live and going. So awesome. All right. Well, everybody that is watching this, whether you're watching it live or watching the recording, thanks for being on here. A lot of y'all that have been following me for a while, you're going to recognize Brittyn, who we've been doing this for several times for quite a while now. But we're actually recording this one. We're going to host it on as many platforms as we can. Plus, we just have a lot of new followers always joining us, and so some of y'all may be seeing Brittyn for the first time. I'm going to let her introduce herself in just a minute, but the main reason why we bring her on and talk so frequently is because the kids in our office, they're really struggling in so many different areas of life, and one of the biggest factors that plays a role in these kids' struggles is their nutrition. And me and my wife, we've got 3 boys that right now are just going through absurd growth spurts, and it's like they never stop eating food, and that can wear on you because you buy a full week's worth of groceries, and when they're gone in 2 days, the last thing you want to do is go back to the grocery store. So fast food becomes very easy at that point. I found a receipt to a place that we typically don't eat at last night in my wife's car when I went and picked up my son from church. But I just realized these kids they don't, our oldest has grown 6 inches and 3.5 shoe sizes in the past 8 months. And our 8-year-old's right behind him. So Brittyn's going to try to give us some tips today on things that we can do that while our kids are growing, while they're developing, that would make sure that we're fueling their bodies as good as they can, because it plays such a huge part. And, she's got a very personal story of her own. And that's why, that's why we work directly with Brittyn, because she has such a passion for what it is that we do. So Brittyn, thanks for joining us all the way on the West Coast. She is, her and her husband have been in San Francisco. How long have you been in San Francisco now?
About 1.5 years now.
About 1.5 years. So she's amazing. The best, pediatric nutritionist I've ever worked with, which is why we have her on here. So thanks for joining us, Brittyn.
Thank you so much for having me. I always love talking with you. I feel like we have the best conversations, and I just want to record every single one because they're all just so fun and have so much information there. And the last one we did together was more about chiropractic, and it was just the most interesting information. My followers loved it. So I always love our conversations. So, but yeah, to introduce myself a little bit, like you said, my name is Brittyn, like the country. A lot of people hear me say Brittany, so I always just want to make sure we're on the same page. But my husband and I live in San Francisco, and yeah, we've been here for about 1.5 years, and we love it here. And I grew up in Oklahoma, so that's actually how Dr. Wilson and I met, was from a common client in Oklahoma City. And so we've been, I think you and I met probably 2-3 years ago. I think that sounds about right. And so I've loved our partnership that we've had. So I do have a really personal story with nutrition. First of all, I am a dietitian, and I specialize in kids, but more specifically, I focus on kids with ADHD, autism, sensory processing disorder, picky eating, gut issues. That's a lot of different things, but they kind of all fit in together. And I have a brother that's... So I do have a really personal story with nutrition. First of all, I am a dietitian, and I specialize in kids, but I think I'm getting some feedback. Can you hear it?
I accidentally pushed the button. I should.
That's okay. I was like, sounds like me. So I do have a really personal story with my brother. So he's diagnosed on the autism spectrum, and he's 24 now, and will be 25 here in a few months, and has come a really long way. He was nonverbal at 4. Did ABA therapy, speech therapy, OT. He even saw a dietitian. So back then, that's huge to have seen a dietitian for autism, because even now, it's a lot of people just don't know that that's something that you should be doing. And so He has come a very, very long way. We're really proud of him. He still has a really selective diet. And of course, I'm the last person that he wants to listen to. Your older sister telling you how to eat is the last thing that he wants to do. So, but there are a lot of different things around the holidays that I try and encourage him to try new foods and, work with him there. So, but anyway, so I did specialize in autism and nutrition, and I worked in a few multidisciplinary clinics in Oklahoma City, and this was 4 or 5 years ago that I
Anyway, so I did
but I just found that I didn't have the reach that I really wanted to have. And so I started my own private practice, and that's called Autism Dietitian. And so I now practice virtually across the US. Still see my Oklahoma clients. I'm still licensed there, and I'm able to practice in many states across the US. So if you're interested in autism and nutrition or need some help with any of the things we talk about, picky eating, gut health, I'm your girl. I'll plug myself at the end too, but you can follow me on Instagram, which is just Autism Dietitian. So that's the best place to reach me. But yeah, there's my little intro. Should I keep going from there, or where would you like to go?
Well, you kind of messaged me like, hey, what do you want to talk about in this? And I'm just going to kind of let you lead into it. But I'll tell you, some of the biggest questions we always have with patients is really not, we talked about this a lot before, and some people are watching this, is a lot of people know what's bad for us. I shouldn't eat fried foods. We should probably stay away from sugar. But there's so much out there, so misconception, and a lot of different people that call themselves nutritionists and experts, or they're selling a product that has helped with all of, we're not even going to go down that road, but you get into these multi-level groups that have all these products that help with all these things, and there's just so much junk in them that I find the biggest issue parents struggle with is they don't really know what's bad for them. And we can get overwhelmed because there's so much information out there. And, the easy thing is to, sit down with, an expert like you and dig into it. But a lot of people they don't know that resource is out there, which is why we're trying to share that information. It's the same with chiropractic and, working with pediatric and pregnancy is it's getting more known. But the easy thing is to hop on Google and just start searching something, and Lord knows what you're going to find on there. And they're like, all right, I should probably get my kid on a probiotic. So let's go to Walmart and let's buy a probiotic that's on the shelf. Or, maybe I should, give my kid this shake that my friends, just to get them some calories in. And it's tough. So kind of give me the basic, if you could, just generic across, I know it's tough to say across the board, but what's, 2 or 3 tips that you can give parents that are watching this of things that they can look for, or maybe even, the number one thing probably is elimination that we've talked about. What are some things that parents could look at eliminating that could possibly help with their kids' behavior or their attitude or just their overall health?
Definitely. So I do want to touch on what you had said, people finding information online. There's so much false information out there. And a lot of these blogs that are saying, hey, this is what you should do for your kid, this is what you should do for your kid, are not coming from healthcare providers. It's coming from parents, which that is their journey. And they've really noticed some, beneficial changes there. But at the end of the day, they're not a licensed healthcare provider. And what works for one kid isn't going to work for another. And I say that all the time in my practice. I don't have one specific approach that works for every single one of my clients. We do a lot of different testing. We do a lot of different trials, a lot of different elimination diets, and we find what works for each kid. So if you ever find anything online that says, hey, this will work for every kid with autism or every kid who's a picky eater, every kid with sensory processing, don't necessarily believe that at the first read, because there's no one thing that works for every single person, whether you have autism or not. And you're just, for me or you either. There's nothing that works for both of us. We're both very different when it comes to genetic makeup and, all these other things. So just wanted to plug that in there. But I do see a lot of parents who have really picky eaters, and, it can come down to a few different things. The reasons why a child might be selected. It can be behavioral. So, there are young kiddos that have learned, hey, if I gag at this food, or if I just don't eat this, mom's going to give me something that I really like. So we have to decide if it's behavioral, or the other side of things, sometimes it's sensory. And if it's a sensory processing issue, meaning that a child has a really hard time breaking down different senses, and that's really overwhelming for them, they're not going to be able to eat like, a child who doesn't have sensory processing issues. It's not something that they can control. It's something that's more neurological and more, it's just honestly uncontrollable. And so what I have to do with a lot of parents is we have to think about, is it a sensory processing issue, or is it a behavioral issue? Because those two things are approached very differently. And so signs of sensory processing could be they can't handle loud noises or being in very crowded places. They get very overwhelmed by the feeling of their clothing. Like my brother still wears his socks inside out because he can't stand the seam. So it's just, you just look at those differences between behavioral and sensory eating. And when it comes to, most of my clients are more the sensory side. And so when we do have a child who does have some sensory issues, when we think about eating, that is the most sensory rich experience, or almost one of the most sensory rich experiences we have as humans. We smell the food, we taste it, we hear the crunch, we feel the temperature in our mouth. There's all these things happening at once. And it can be so overwhelming for a child that does have these sensory processing issues. And so we just have to approach it one sense at a time. There's a specific type of feeding therapy that I use with many of my clients. Now, of course, I don't do one-on-one therapy with the child because we're working virtually. So I really am teaching the parent those different approaches to feeding, while I also am recommending that they find a feeding therapist in their area so that their child can get one-on-one help. So I'm helping the parent at home, we're helping integrate the right foods, and then their therapist is kind of how. How are we going to get this child to eat foods? Is there a chewing issue? Is there a swallowing problem? Or do they have a tongue tie where they can't, get the food onto their back teeth? There's all these things. So it's also very helpful to have, a speech pathologist or an occupational therapist who knows to look out for those things. So when it comes to picky eating, just being consistent, always offering a new food at each mealtime, even if it's a very, very small amount. I always recommend my parents to start with very, very manageable amounts. You don't want to start with half a cup of broccoli. We might want to start with a tiny, tiny little bite of broccoli and move forward from there. We might not even want to encourage them to eat it at the first time they see it. A lot of times I'll tell parents that we can use something called a learning plate, and they have a little saucer that sits outside of their child's plate where they can just see it and learn about it before we even tell them to eat it. So they recognize it the next time that it's put in front of them, and they're the first time they see it, they're able to get the visual aspect of the sensory part of all of it. They're able to maybe smell it. They could even touch it, interact with it. And then the next time, maybe we encourage them to, go a little bit further. And if they're not ready yet, don't force them. We really want to build trust between you and your child. We don't want to sneak any foods inside of their current foods, although it's really tempting. But the long-term approach is going to be teaching your children about food, getting them to be comfortable with sensory aspect of food as well, and teaching them those coping mechanisms and those steps in order to try new foods in the future whenever they might be overwhelmed from a sensory standpoint. So there's a lot that goes into all of that. That's really simplifying all of it. So that's why I always recommend having a feeding therapist, or having a dietitian who's specializing in selective eating or sensory processing, so that you can get that full approach there, so that you're approaching it from all sides.
Good. Love that. Yeah. We noticed, this time of year is really, really busy for us. We don't have as many sit down dinners as we'd like, but we had a night was it this week? It was earlier this week. It was Monday, where we were actually all home. So my wife's like, hey, I'm going to cook the boys dinner. She said, I asked her on the phone what we're having. She says, we're having Star Wars goulash. And I was like, what is Star Wars goulash? She's like, I'll explain when we get home. So I come home. I was like, what does this have to do with Star Wars? And she's like, nothing. I just told the kids it was, so it would get them more intrigued to eat it. I was like, you're playing mind tricks on the kids.
Yeah.
It's normal goulash with grain-free pasta, mind you. But our oldest son, he's at the point where he'll try about anything. We finally had gotten him past that point where he is, hesitant to try foods. Now our 8-year-old, on the other hand, as soon as we put it down, it was full like, I don't like this. This is disgusting. We're like, you've never eaten it before. This is the first time we made it. And it was it was one of those nights where it was the end of the Monday for me, which is our busiest day of the week. My wife has not really been feeling all that well. And both of us were just kind of like, I'm not in the mood for this. Eat food. And we could catch ourselves doing the things that we know not to be doing. And I finally just kind of took a step back and was like, all right, what can I do here? So we kind of talked through it a little bit, and he was wanting to talk to me about these Christmas Legos that he wanted. I was like, here, bud, I will have all the conversation about that after you take your first bite. And he finally took a bite of it. He was like, oh man, this is actually good. Didn't even say anything to me about the Legos after that. I finished his dinner, and then later I was like, hey, you want to talk about those Legos? And then he didn't stop talking for about 45 minutes. But yeah, those days are hard. And it's, I like your idea of kind of setting that aside if it's the first time for him, because I mean, my kids have their like 4 or 5 staples they want to go to every single time. And I'm like, let's add some variety in there. Let's get some fruits and vegetables in there, which we know is important, but it's tough. And so, yeah, that's good. I like that suggestion.
Yeah. And it takes time too to build in all those things. You have to just start with one thing at a time. One approach that I really like from another blogger that I follow, she uses this method called love it, like it, and learning it. And so on the plate, she uses divided plates, which is something I recommend for a lot of my clients because it helps decrease the anxiety around the food touching, which is really common in many of the kids I see. And so we'll have a big portion of a food that they love. It's in their constant rotation. We all have a like, so that's their love it, and we have a like it option. So that's their food that maybe they've tried a few times, maybe they'll eat a little inconsistently. And then we have a learning it food, and that can be on the learning plate where they are getting exposure to that new food. And so they know, okay, I always have a food that I like and I'm comfortable around it. And then that kind of decreases some of the anxiety. And then if they know they have a food that they'll eat, a lot of times they're more often to try new foods because they're not so opposed to, trying the only one food option on their plate that they've never seen before. So I really like that. I think her name is Veggies and Virtue on Instagram, and she's a really good follow. So.
I'll have to look that up.
Yeah.
So what are some 2 to 3 things that you would suggest parents possibly look at decreasing or maybe even removing from their kids' nutrition?
It depends for every person. But I mean, so I will touch on allergies and sensitivities. So many of the kids that I see with autism and ADHD, they have recurring gut issues, whether that's constipation, diarrhea, bloating, stomach pain, you name it. There's so many different things that go on with that. But whenever you have those gut issues, you're more likely to have food sensitivities. And there are some kids that, just are born with a lot of food sensitivities as well. And so we're not talking allergies here. So allergies are a very immediate response. We're having our throat fill up, we're having hives, this more immediate reaction. Food sensitivities are more long-term. They can be harder to catch because they might show up 48, 72 hours after you've had a certain food and can cause GI inflammation, body inflammation, can cause eczema, behavioral issues, brain fog, all of these other things that we're typically seeing with kids. Just pulling in some of the research there, what the research says is usually about 6 to 8% of the population has a true allergy. About 50% of the population has a food sensitivity. So a lot more common to have sensitivities anyway. So the foods that I see that are most problematic for many of the people I see, dairy is number one. That is the food group that I see causing the most issues in GI inflammation. honestly, I know a lot of people are wanting to use dairy for calcium. There are many, many other foods that contain calcium. And even the research is showing us that calcium from dairy milk is not absorbed very well into the bones. In fact, it may even be pulled out. And so there's still ongoing research about that. But I just say, if that's the only reason you're using milk is for calcium, let's find other options, because there are other options out there. Broccoli even is a great source of calcium. So since we were just talking about that, but another problematic food that I see is gluten. So that's a big one that kind of everyone is aware of. Gluten can be very inflammatory, but not for every single person. Same with dairy. Everybody's different, but those are two foods that are worth trying to take out of the diet. So gluten is the protein in wheat, barley, rye, and some other things as well. And then I'll kind of group together the last two things, but corn and soy are another two other inflammatory foods I often see that are problematic, because both corn and soy are typically, I think about 90% of both of them are typically genetically modified, and most of them are non-organic. And so whenever we have a non-organic source and it's genetically modified, we're kind of just set up for some issues there. And so if we really think that there's underlying gut issues and we can't test for it, let's say the family doesn't have the financial availability to test for the food sensitivities, or they just don't want to for some reason, then those are 4 things that you might want to play around with to see. I would recommend either taking them out one at a time. That's always the best thing to do, because you don't want to take all 4 out and then you have no idea what helped. Take them out one at a time, give them a few weeks each, and then just kind of build on top of each other. Some people will decide to take all 4 out at once, and then after 4 to 6 weeks, add one back at a time and see if you notice any changes. So you can they're both kind of inverse ways to do it. But I would start with one and give yourself a few weeks in between each one, because it can take a second for the body to calm down from the inflammation of that food. So the best option would be to test. So I do a lot of food sensitivity testing, and that really works wonders for my clients, because it gives us almost like a little shortcut to figure out, for picky eaters, which foods should we actually be focusing on and spending our time on adding into the diet. If they have a gluten sensitivity, we don't want to be working on adding in whole grain bread, because that's not a good option for them. So I would say test, don't guess.
Yeah, that's the whole, I love the idea of testing, because it gives us a great idea of what to avoid, because inevitably you probably experience this. I'm sure a lot of parents are blown away by some of the things that show up on that, because my wife, when she did her food sensitivity test, it's probably the first one she did was probably about 3-4 years ago. One of her biggest triggers was grapes. And it's like, there can be foods that are perceived healthy, fruits, veggies, avocados was a trigger for her. But so she would keep a bag of grapes in the freezer and just use that as a snack. And every time she's eating it, she's causing inflammation. And you wonder why you have a lot of these issues like chronic fatigue, the gut issues. You could be a chronic sickness issue. We see it with kids all the time. It could be an asthma, digestion issue, respiratory issue. That once we remove those things, we see adjustments help in so many kids, but sometimes there's some kids who just still get blocked. And I'll mention and talk about it, but I never force it on them. But you just kind of throw that seed out there, and then it comes back to like, hey, have you been, removing the dairy like we suggested? No, I haven't. I was like, well, let's try that. And we had my own mom that her son was coming in for ear infections, and we helped to decrease them, but he was still getting them, and dad was pushing to do the ear tubes. I'm like, hey, before you guys do the tubes, cut out dairy for 2 to 4 weeks, see what happens. And that was about 3 months ago. And the ENT's like, whatever you guys, the ENT's like, the medication we switched to is working, let's keep doing it. She's like, we haven't been on the medication, so that's not it. And well, what have you been doing? And he's like, well, we cut out dairy. He's like, we'll keep doing it then. It's working. I was like, of course he jumps to the medicine first, but
I know. I hear that story all the time with dairy. Post-nasal drip, ear tubes, congestion. There's a lot of things that.
Well, it's such a big producer of mucus, and that, if our body is not good at eliminating that, it is going to cause some issues. And it's tough. My kids, some of their favorite foods all have cheese on them. So we can do it in small amounts. I can tell my 8-year-old when he's had too much. And, you know, it usually involves him spending a couple of days at the grandparents' house. And my father-in-law is an awesome man, love him to death. But man, the guy, his one of his favorite things to do is bring the boys donuts and buy them pizza. And it's like, all right, one or the other. Let's not do them both. And, let's not let him have an entire pizza and an entire box of donuts with some donut holes and milk on top of it. So, like, and a lot of people think that their kids are going to suffer. Trust me, your kids are not going to suffer. I mean, they're suffering now just with the sickness. And that's what I tell people is like, you shouldn't. And I think a big issue you can probably touch on this is we make food such an object in our life to where a lot of people's life, and I think a lot of these eating disorders are maybe started as young children because we put such emphasis on the food or how they eat it. And it's, you know, food should be something that nourishes our body. It should be a time where we're sitting together down as families and, you know, spending quality time together. But it's at a point now where it's just rush, 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 go, 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 shove something in your mouth. And kids start to develop a negative relationship with food. And, you know, it could be a very strict parent who doesn't allow certain foods, and then the kids get out. I mean, I remember the first time I got my license, and I was like, I can go get an icy at 7-Eleven. My parents have to. And I don't know why I had that thought, because I don't like ices from 7-Eleven, but it was that freedom thing of being an adult. I was like, oh, I can go eat whatever I want to, which my diet consisted of microwave burritos with sliced Kraft cheese and, you know, Lord knows what other processes. That was my go-to right there. That and pizza rolls. But, you know, of course, when we were younger, we didn't have the Whole Foods. We didn't have the Sprouts and the natural grocers to go pick these, you know, great. And even, you know, Target and Walmart are obviously getting on board now and seeing this big movement. But that's still where you can see some of these companies like Tyson is trying to look like they're healthy. And they can do it just by putting some different wrapping on their foods. And a local gas station, your 7-Eleven, they changed their delivery trucks to the colors on them are green and blue, which signify health. So people are like, oh, 7-Eleven's got healthy stuff now. Like, no, they're just duping you. I mean, my favorite
greenwashing you.
My favorite one was when Wendy's had natural cut fries. I'm like, all it did was leave the skin on them. It's still a French fry.
Yeah. Well, they're also referring to the cut as natural. They're like natural cut. It's not natural fries. And natural has no health meaning at all, which there's no regulations behind that. So it just doesn't even, I mean, potatoes are natural. So it's natural, right? So
peanut oil, and it's a health food.
Yep.
I mean, people think Chick-fil-A is healthy. I'm like, no, people love Chick-fil-A. I mean, I even went by there this morning and got some gift cards for kids at the office because they love them. And, you know, it's like, all right, we also give snacks at the office that are, I can't even remember the name of the brand, but they're all natural snacks. So it's like, you want a snack, you got to have this.
Yeah.
And a buddy of mine, he gives, I can't think of it. There's some vitamin gummy that he gives kids. But he's like, they do good on their scans. He's like, yeah, you want a gummy? Here you go. But it's like filled with vitamins in it.
Yeah.
So there's many things we can do for our kids that are healthy for them, that it's not limiting them. It's not affecting them on that level. One more question I want to ask you is what are, you know, we talked about probiotics earlier, but supplementation is big. I mean, because kids are on so many medications nowadays when they come in our office. Average that we see is about 6 to 8 medications. And those are just destroying the gut. They're destroying the immune system. But what are some, you know, a couple of supplements that you could suggest to parents? Like you said, I know it's not one size fits all, but what are some of the top things that parents should look into for their kids?
Yeah, great question. So just prefacing what I'm about to say, just general advice for the general population. This is not individualized advice for anybody. So if you do need individual advice for supplements, come talk to me. Would love to have a consult with you and get you on a good supplement regimen. But the top 3 supplements that I like to see my clients on: a good multivitamin, making sure that we're using the methylated forms of B vitamins, because that means that these B vitamins are getting into the cell a lot easier. They're not just sitting around in the serum and the blood, and we just want to make sure that we can help these kids actually absorb that. So good examples of that are folate and B12. So most multivitamins have folic acid and something called cyanocobalamin, which are two inactive B vitamins. We want to make sure that the B vitamins are methylated. So methylfolate, methyl B12, those are your best options. We want to make sure that we're getting those active nutrients. It costs a little more, but it's well worth it. So a methylated multivitamin, and then I love an omega supplement. So omegas are really, really important for the brain and cognitive development and focus, and decreasing brain fog, the whole shebang. So usually an active form of omegas is best. So meaning like from an animal. So it's already converted into that. So fish oil is a great option. Some people would rather have a plant-based option. That's great. Flax oil is a great supplement. There's a lot of different, fatty acid sources that you can get for plant-based as well. And then the last one is a probiotic. So I love me a good probiotic, especially helpful for kids on the spectrum with ADD. There's a huge connection between the gut and the brain. It's the gut-brain axis, and I do a lot of work with the gut-brain axis and regulating the bacteria that's in the gut. So probiotics are often needed. Some kids don't do well on probiotics, and that's just because their gut biome is different. And so I do a lot of stool testing. We look at the gut biome and figure out what specific probiotic we need to be taking, how much, and just get a good idea on the individual. But probiotics are great. A good rule of thumb is to have one that offers at least 10 billion CFU, and I like to see 8 to 10 strains of probiotics there. So you mentioned this, do not go to Walmart or Target to get your probiotic. It just makes me cringe. They have they're not looking out for you from a health perspective. They're just looking to sell a probiotic because people are looking for them. You need to go somewhere where people are actually have your best health in mind. So health food store is a great place to go. A lot of times I have really great people who can put you in the right direction. The best option is to buy from very qualified, high therapeutic brands online. Some good ones I use are Clear Labs with K, Pure Encapsulation, Seeking Health, just to name a few. But I give my clients access to something called Full Script, which is a professional grade supplement. Amazon is what I like to call it. And as my client, they all get discounts. And so they are able to buy these high grade supplements for less because I know that they're needed and I want to make sure that their money is going.
Good. Love that.
I have a blog about supplements on my website as well, top supplements for autism. So some of my favorite ones are linked there. But again, that's just general advice. If you want individual advice, definitely talk to somebody who's an expert, or I would love to talk to you as well.
Perfect. Yeah. I'll have to get that blog from you. I was actually talking to a patient artist today that's going to help us start adding to our blog. So
Awesome.
We'll have to get that and share it. On the probiotics, just one quick question. Do they have to be refrigerated? Because I know a lot of them today are they're saying they're creating them to where they don't have to be refrigerated. So what's your thoughts on that?
I think the best ones will be refrigerated because you're maintaining the integrity of that bacteria. Whenever bacteria are exposed to heat or to acid, they die. And so, or most of the time they die. Some of the probiotics that you'll use, if they're high quality, they'll put some acid protectant around them so that when it hits your stomach acid, you're still absorbing them into your gut. So a lot of the ones that I use are all, you need to keep them in the refrigerator. So I always encourage parents to do that as long as they don't get hot. You usually are pretty good. But those shelf stable $10 probiotics, again, at Walmart or Target, that's just, it's yucky. I mean, you don't want to use that. You don't want to put it into your gut. So I have seen some very reputable brands recently offer a shelf-stable probiotic. So still something I need to look into. They're brands I really trust. So, I trust that they would produce a high-quality probiotic that's shelf-stable. But just always Instead, keep it in the fridge just just to prevent any of that bacteria dying off and make sure you're giving the best dose you can.
Okay, perfect, perfect. Where I know you're all over social media, where can people find you at best?
Best place to find me is Instagram. So at Autism Dietitian is definitely a best bet. I post there nearly daily, do stories a lot, and have a lot of information about my practice. You can also find me on my website, autismdietitian.com. So that's a great place as well. I'm also on Facebook if you don't have Instagram, so you can reach me there. But the most engagement I have is definitely on Instagram. So you can sign up for my email list and get some emails about different offers that I have. I also just recently launched a 6-month program. So the 6-month biomedical program, and I'm working one-on-one with clients throughout the 6 months to essentially do all this biomedical testing to further target the supplements and the diet that children should be on. So that's something you're interested in. You can also apply on my website. You'll see a link to it on my Instagram. And I'm even happy to extend a discount to your followers as well. So we can put that in the notes, but I can just make it, Optimal Chiro or something like that, where they can just use that little code and get $100 off of the 6-month program. So just look for that and maybe some notes or something like that, or even underneath this video.
Awesome. All right. I appreciate it, Brittyn. Can you give a little tag for your friend that we're actually going to be interviewing next week?
Yeah. So Ryan is a good friend. She's the prenatal nutritionist online, and she went to school with me. So we actually met. It was my sophomore year, her freshman year of college. And what's funny is I was actually her small group leader at Camp Crimson at OU, and so we met and we just became good friends and followed each other through college. We ended up going to the same program. And then we both ended up graduating, moving to California. She lives in San Diego and I'm in San Francisco, and ended up doing virtual practice. And so we kind of followed the same story. She just works with women who are either they're prenatal, they have or they're pregnant, or they're postnatal or postpartum. Just had a baby, and she's just wonderful. She also takes a very similar approach. Everyone's different. It's important to find what works for you and for your body and for your baby. And I just admire her, and she just really supports a so I'm excited you're talking to her. I know that you connected through, I had posted some stuff about her, so I'm so glad that you guys connected. And I'm excited she'll be on there.
As much as social media drives me crazy sometimes, it's awesome and how it can connect people, because I would have never have found her if you happen to have a picture of her book, which we've got. So we're going to be diving in next Tuesday night with her, doing the same thing, and talking all things pregnancy. So I appreciate you coming on and sharing so much information. Every time we do these, people always comment on how much they love it. So thanks for being such a great resource. It's people like you that help us just join together and help these kids just live the life that they were created to, let the families be happier and healthier. It's, I saw a stat last week that blew my mind that said the divorce rate in sensory families is about 80% now. And that's just, to think about that blows my mind, because it's, the route that the parents know, the one that they keep choosing, the one they go down, it's not working. If it was working, the divorce rate wouldn't be 80%. So it takes people like us to help interject in these families. And by means, we're not, marriage counselors, but, we are playing a big role in helping these kids just be better connected to themselves. So,
and a thing to that too, I always encourage the parents that I work with to get connected into different communities online so that they can have that social support. Because if nobody in your family has a sensory issue or autism, it can feel really isolating and really lonely, or even none of your friends. And so just know that there's communities out there that are there to support you. And it is hard. I grew up in a family who, you know, my brother had autism, and I mean, my parents are divorced too, and you know, I don't know if that plays into the you know, the whole sensory and autism thing, but it's hard, and it's really hard on a family. And so whenever you can pull together and just see, you know, the positives of it as well, and grow with each other, and have a community that can support you throughout it, and just realize that you're not alone. Actually, I want to plug in somebody into this. There's a company called, or an organization called Wolf and Friends. Have you heard of that before? So it is an app where you can make friends with other mothers or dads who are on this app who have children with special needs. And you can also find specialists in your area who specialize in kids with sensory processing or autism. And it is awesome. So you can get connected into different therapists, and from a community standpoint too. So thought I'd just plug them because I think they're wonderful. But it's a great resource. So
awesome. All right, Brittyn. Well, thanks for coming on here today. Hope you guys have an amazing day. Enjoy y'all's Christmas coming up.
yes, thank you.
I'll get this uploaded to our website, and then I'll have you send over that link that you talked about with some more information. We'll get an email sent out with this video to everybody, because I know everyone's going to want to start looking into all the information we shared. So appreciate you again, as always. Have an amazing day. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. Thanks so much.